You're listening to Nick Healy on ABC Western Plains.
It's been a weird year when it comes to business, and probably more than usual we've been relying on email when we can't do our face-to-face meetings. But is that causing some problems? Matthew Dickerson, a good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning, Nick.
Matthew, if I send less email, can I help save the planet?
It does sound a bit drastic, doesn't it? I am the worst offender, Nick. I know, well, you send me emails and I'll often go back and say, thanks, okay, sure. And there's a group of UK officials that have looked at that and they've said if every person in the UK sent one less email, then that would make a huge impact to the amount of greenhouse gases that are produced. And you start to think, well, how does that work? How can one email possibly create that many greenhouse gases? And when you start to break it down and you think about all the things that are involved in you sending a simple email, your computer, the infrastructure at your end, the internet connections, the cloud servers, etc., it adds up to a bit. But it's a bit of a stretch, isn't it, one email? So their calculations, and these are, and they admit themselves, back of the envelope style calculations.
Yeah.
They said that it would save about 16,433 tonnes of carbon a year, which sounds like a lot. But then when you think the UK generates 435 million tonnes, then it's about 0.0037% of the overall picture of what they create. But still, it's a start. But I think when you start to look at it, things like streaming services, online games, some of the cloud services that are out there, they're probably using a lot more than just your simple little email. But I suppose what it's really trying to do is highlight the fact that even though I'm a little bit biased, but I think IT makes us fairly green in general because it reduces the amount of travel we need to do. I don't have to travel down to the studio to sit in the studio with you at the moment. I can do it remotely. So those sort of things sound good. But then you've got these huge server farms that are generating huge amounts of greenhouse gases with the electricity they're using up. But some of those providers as well say that they are entirely carbon neutral, and so they're buying a lot of offsets for their carbon. And some other companies, and I won't name names here, but some of the large tech companies are at the point where they say within 5 years, every bit of electricity they use will be generated from renewables. So that's pretty interesting when you look at that. You say, well, maybe it's actually a lot greener than we think it is.
Maybe it is a lot greener. I think only time's going to tell on that one. But, maybe for the sake of the planet and your own soul and your own day, maybe one or two less emails wouldn't hurt any of us.
It's a fine line, isn't it? Because I still like that courtesy thing, Nick, of going, thanks for that, received it, got it, it's okay. But yeah, when you start to break it down, if we just did a little bit less with everything we do, then maybe that'll make a bit of a difference.
All right, well, let's move topics into something that's, I'm not going to lie, a bit delicate for this time of the morning. One of the phenomenons we discovered in 2020 is the idea of doom scrolling, when you just can't stop going through your social media feeds. If you've been doing that on the toilet, you could be in a bit of trouble, apparently.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of this one too, Nick. You're picking on me this morning.
I'm so sorry.
There's a gastroenterologist in Sydney who did an operation on a fairly young person, a 23-year-old woman, for hemorrhoids, a huge hemorrhoid, in fact. And he started thinking, this just doesn't seem normal for someone this young. And he did a bit more research and found a fair few people over the last 18 months of that sort of age, in their early 20s, mid-20s, are having these hemorrhoid operations, when really that's something that he would have expected to see on maybe people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, not someone so young. Then a bit more research showed that they're spending 20 minutes, 25 minutes, half an hour maybe, on the toilet. And that doesn't seem like it's a good thing for a hemorrhoid problem. So people are sitting there on the toilet. They're, as you said, they're scrolling away on their social media feeds. They're working away on their phone. They're doing whatever they've got to do on their phone. They can't put it down possibly for a few minutes. And all that time on the toilet, and I won't go into the intricacies of how it causes some problems, but basically that causes a few problems and can cause hemorrhoids. So, I mean, it used to be when I was growing up, if you sit on cold concrete, don't sit on cold concrete, you'll have some problems there. Now it's a bit different to that. It's don't sit on the toilet for long. And I'm doubly guilty. Not only do I do it myself, Nick, but one of my daughters a few years ago complained that in one of our toilets in our house, she couldn't quite get Wi-Fi at good speed. So I added a few Wi-Fi routers. So we've now got 4 wireless access points around our house, so you can get Wi-Fi in every part of the house, including every toilet. And so now I'm going to say to them, hey, get off the toilet. Don't spend so long on the toilet because it might cause some problems later on.
Matthew, I'm horrified. Are we really using our phones on the toilet that regularly?
Well, yes. I know my kids are, and so I am as well. And there's the whole COVID issue with that as well. You get out of the toilet, you've been touching your phone, you wash your hands, fantastic, and then you pick up your phone that you've been using in the toilet. So now most phones are waterproof. You need to wash your phone when you come out of the toilet as well. There's too much being revealed this morning.
I'm going to move us on from this, but we might keep the surgery side of it because I'm really interested in this. We've been talking a lot about 3D printing. You and I have talked about the idea of even 3D printing a house. We've seen food being 3D printed. Could we 3D print a human heart?
Well, yes and no, and that's a bit of an obscure answer, but we've actually gotten to the point where we just have 3D printed a human heart. It's not at the level that could be used in a human. So basically it gives you, the surgeons, the idea of what a heart feels like, how they could operate on it, all the things that they do to practice on it. So rather than having to practice on someone that's deceased and taking a heart, because it's a bit hard to get hold of cadavers all the time, so basically they've been able to 3D print a heart to be able to use for practice. But it doesn't have all the ability to transmit electricity to pump like a normal human heart would do. But let's face it, if we're at this point now where we've got basically as realistic as possible a human heart, it's probably only a few years away before we do get to that point where you don't have heart transplants, you don't have valve transplants, they just print a new heart for you. I'd be concerned about something like athletes saying, hey, I'm almost breaking the 4-minute mile, why don't I get a new heart, a bigger heart put in? I mean, there might be some ethics issues around that. But the idea now, and one of the tricky things about this printing, Nick, was that printing, with 3D printing normally, you're taking some sort of substance, say it might be a plastic, you're turning that into something malleable, and then printing something that sets hard. With this, the trick was you're trying to print something that stays with a certain amount of elasticity to match the human heart. So they had to print into another substance that maintained the structure for the printing to finish, and then they applied heat to get rid of that gel structure they printed it in, so they had the elasticity of the human heart. So fantastic technology going on there, but yeah, we're not quite ready to drop that in someone's body yet.
Well, my fingers are crossed for that one. Matthew Dickinson, we'll leave it there. We'll talk again in a fortnight. Thanks for your time.
Sounds good, Nick. Thank you.